A lot of time played, a lot of changes to a lot of the units as well. Definitely more time you figure out who's good and bad. So let me know down in the comments where you guys would place your favorite and least favorite Mechabellum units and where I placed mine. Please don't forget, like, subscribe, check out all of my other tier lists and content, including Mechabellum content and any other video game that you might like, as well as some TV shows and movies tier lists as well if you're interested in those tier lists. But let us get started. The biggest changes, we won't do a change. Obviously, Mustang is just still S tier. It's easily the most useful unit in the game. High damage, high fire rate, decent amount of health, decent amount of number of units, can attack ground and air, so it's just naturally too. And honestly, a lot of the upgrades make it just that much better, stopping storm collars, which I actually think they may have taken that out as a nerf to the Mustangs. But still, just Mustangs are probably always going to be S tier unless they really switch it around. Crawlers I gotta put in C. They're just honestly stopped by pretty much everything. Um, they really only excel kind of early in the game, or if somebody is using certain builds like a whole lot of marksmen, or even fangs at times. If you can get some upgraded crawlers, they're not too bad. Storm collars, obviously. Sledgehammers, kind of. Melting point, possibly, if they don't have the 5 beams, but overall crawlers are pretty shit. Um, Arc lights I will give to B, but it's like B minus there. They're just not very good. They're good against crawler spams. They're decent against fangs. And having the option to also shoot air is decent. But arc lights are definitely on the lower end of all of the units in the game for sure. Now some up and coming ones that I have found with the damage sharing, definitely has to be steel balls and sledgehammers. Honestly, you start with these guys, get the damage sharing. If they're facing pretty much any melee only team, they're gonna highly excel. The only reason why they're honestly not an S is just because they can't shoot air. And there are some units that definitely do excel against these guys. Crawlers I would probably take over steel balls at times, as well as some any air units, obviously. But they have their downsides for sure. But very strong with damage sharing. Um, Very hard to kill in that way. Definitely lets you get massive upgrades for them as well. Overlord I will put in A. I have thought about putting them in S, but honestly the problem is by the time you get an Overlord, unless you get a free one or whatever, there are a lot of things that can damage it just as quickly. Think of by the time you have enough money to drop an Overlord, unless you do it early on purpose, between marksmen, which are probably plenty of, between that time you got melting points as well, and honestly any other enemy air at the same time, plus possibly Mustangs. Overlords are still very good though. They have super strong upgrades, and I think that you could probably bump them into the S. I would probably say they're the best air unit for sure. But you definitely have to watch for the high health, high damage enemy units as well. But I'll drop them to S. I think they're the best air unit, and I think you got to put at least one of those in there, considering there's only 3. But it is what it is. Phoenix. I would say Phoenix and Wasp deserve A. Phoenix, while there's only two of them, I think if you have some more higher health enemy units on the ground, they're good, especially with some upgrades or even against some overlords if they're not being targeted. Not too bad either. They can be useful, but I would honestly say they're probably, to me, they might be the worst aerial unit. And the reason why I would say the Wasps might be better than the Phoenix is just because if you can put some of the upgrades, whether it's attack, shield, or the fact that they can do more damage to ground targets, are some very huge upgrades for the Wasps, and they shoot pretty fast. I think they can definitely, melt some teams if they're not paying attention. And honestly, I would say their biggest counter is Mustangs for sure, and maybe some Fangs. But Fangs I'm going to put in B. I think they could go into A just because of some upgrades and the fact that they can shoot aerial units, but they're just pretty overall easy to kill. Whether it's any aerial units, whether it's a lot of ground targets, I think that they are one of the best low costing units in the game. We'll go with that. Um, but that's just me. Marksman. Uh, Marksman, I'll finally bump him up to A. I think with the amount of units that are higher health single units or very few single health, pretty much I think if the Marksman isn't being targeted, it will be S plus tier. But if it is, it's got to be against somebody that essentially isn't going to overwhelm the Marksman. But I think that if your team can hold out long enough for the Marksman to essentially wipe everybody out, then you're great. I think they do have some decent upgrades no matter which path you take. Um, and I think they're worth it. They're cheap. They can definitely get upgrades quickly. And no matter what trait you choose to go with, whether it's more fangs or double shots or whatever, just kind of depending on your enemy possibly. I think they can be very, very strong and useful, but at the same time, they're not too hard to beat or overwhelm, whether it's wasps, even possibly shielded phoenix, um, or just any units like steel balls, sledgehammers, fangs, crawlers, where there's multiple units coming at them. But still very strong against higher health targets or, cleaning up crew. Fortress to me, I know a lot of people really like Fortress. I don't. Um, if I get to the point where I can buy a Fortress, I'm buying essentially every other higher health unit like Vulcan. So I would say probably S tier, honestly. Just with the amount of damage and range that you can add to them to destroy all the groups of units. They don't have the greatest upgrade pass, but definitely the range is massive. Um, and I think they're one of the best counters to Mustangs for sure. Um, as well as some other mini unit spam. And even if not, they're just going to tank for you. Storm colors I will at this point give to A. I used to think they were pretty trash, but I think if you have, they're very dependent on your team and the enemy team to succeed. But when they do, it's massive. When they don't, it's kind of massive. I could drop them down to B. They're definitely not S, but I think A is a good spot for them if you can make them work and you have the team or enemy team around it. Rhinos, I kind of have to put an S again. At the worst, they're A, but I think they're definitely one of the best units in the game, especially based off whatever upgrades you choose for them. Whether it's, recycling, whether it's, regaining health, photon shields, whatever it is. They're pretty massive. They have a good amount of health. They wipe out teams pretty easily unless you got, some high damage on them like marksmen, maybe some store callers, or obviously any aerial units, but they're very good. Minimum A tier for sure. Melting Point, um, Melting Point, I honestly have to put an S as well, just with all of the upgrade paths again, especially regenerating health. 5 beams or just one strong one against, some more units. Shields, I believe they also have. And I think they also do crawlers as well. But yeah, melting points are definitely strong. Big, high health unit that shoots air and ground and can regen health. Very, very strong. Now, unfortunately, for some reason, they don't have a hacker picture, so this is the hacker. Hacker, I'm going to put in B. I just think it's way too inconsistent. It's not always viable. It's pretty easy to destroy, definitely waste time, going after stuff like crawlers or whatever, which, can honestly waste time for the rest of your teams to succeed. But overall, definitely not the best unit to choose or build around. But let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Don't forget, like, subscribe, check out all of my other tier lists and videos, whether it's Mechabellum ones or any